This is not just a truck. This is a machine built for limits most vehicles will never understand. Because in a world where power is measured in speed, and performance is judged by acceleration, backhand index pointing right, there exists a different kind of strength. The kind that doesn't just move fast. Backhand index pointing right, it moves everything. And when you're talking about real work, massive loads, impossible terrain, relentless pressure, there is one name that stands above the rest. Backhand index pointing right, the GMC Sierra 3500 HD. But the truth is, this truck is not defined by how it looks. Not by the size. Not by the design. Backhand index pointing right, it's defined by what lives under the hood. Because hidden beneath that aggressive body is something built for war. Not racing. Not showing off. Backhand index pointing right, but surviving. Because when you attach tens of thousands of pounds behind you, this is no longer driving. Backhand index pointing right, this is responsibility. And most engines? They break under that kind of pressure. They fade. They hesitate. They struggle. But this one? Backhand index pointing right, it doesn't flinch. Because what powers the Sierra 3500 HD is not just engineered for performance. Backhand index pointing right, it's engineered for punishment. And the moment you press the throttle, you don't feel speed. Backhand index pointing right, you feel force. A deep, controlled, unstoppable push. Like the truck is pulling the earth itself. And that's when you realize something. This is not about horsepower. Backhand index pointing right, this is about torque. Because horsepower might impress you. But torque? Backhand index pointing right, torque moves the world. And the engine inside this truck was built to do exactly that. Because under the hood of the GMC Sierra 3500 HD lies one of the most respected heavy-duty engines ever built. Backhand index pointing right, the Duramax 6.6-liter turbo diesel V8. Not small. Not simple. Backhand index pointing right, built for one purpose. Absolute capability. Because this engine doesn't chase high RPMs. It doesn't scream for attention. Backhand index pointing right, it delivers power where it matters most. Full. Instant. Relentless. And the numbers? They don't just sound impressive. Backhand index pointing right, they redefine what a truck engine can do. Over 470 horsepower. Backhand index pointing right, and more than 975 lb-ft of torque. Let that sink in. Because torque like that doesn't just move the truck. Backhand index pointing right, it moves everything attached to it. Trailers. Heavy equipment. Entire loads that would stop normal vehicles instantly. And the moment you step on the throttle, you don't get a sudden burst. Backhand index pointing right, you get a wave. A deep, controlled surge of power. That builds with confidence. No panic. No struggle. Backhand index pointing right, just pure authority. Because this is diesel power. And diesel doesn't rush. Backhand index pointing right, it dominates. And what makes the Duramax even more dangerous is not just the power. Backhand index pointing right, it's how it handles stress. Because heavy-duty work is not about one pull. It's about hours. Heat. Pressure. Constant load. And while most engines start to lose strength, backhand index pointing right, this one stays consistent. Because inside, everything is reinforced. A strong block. Heavy-duty internals. Advanced cooling systems designed to keep temperatures under control. Even when everything else is starting to fail. And then comes the turbocharger. Backhand index pointing right, the heart of the pressure. Because this isn't just about adding air. It's about controlling power. Delivering boost exactly when needed. Without delay. Without hesitation. And when that turbo spools up, the engine doesn't explode with chaos. Backhand index pointing right, it tightens. Becomes sharper. Stronger. More precise. And that's what makes this engine feel different. Because it doesn't behave like a performance engine. Backhand index pointing right, it behaves like a machine built for responsibility. And then, there's the transmission. Backhand index pointing right, the Allison 10-speed automatic. Built to handle extreme torque. Delivering smooth, controlled power every single time. And together, this setup creates something rare. Backhand index pointing right, strength with precision. Fire extra 3-minute engine add-on. More depth, extended script. But the real story of this engine, backhand index pointing right, goes deeper than numbers. Because raw power means nothing if it can't survive. And that's where the Duramax proves why it's different. Because this engine was built with durability as the first priority. Not speed. Not sound. Backhand index pointing right, survival. Inside the block, everything is overbuilt. Stronger materials. Heavier components. Designed to handle extreme combustion pressure. every single second it runs. And that's what allows it to produce massive torque, without tearing itself apart. Because diesel engines operate differently. Backhand index pointing right, they don't rely on high revs. They rely on compression, controlled explosions, delivering force directly to the crank. And in the Duramax, that process is refined, precise, efficient, deadly effective. And then comes fuel delivery. Because in a diesel engine, backhand index pointing right fuel control is everything. High-pressure fuel injection delivers exact amounts at the perfect moment, creating smooth combustion, maximum efficiency, and consistent power output under load. No waste, no hesitation. Backhand index pointing right, just controlled energy. And when you combine that with forced air from the turbocharger, something powerful happens. More air, more fuel. Backhand index pointing right, more torque. And that torque doesn't spike randomly. It builds in a way that feels predictable, stable, trustworthy. And that's critical, because when you're towing massive weight, the last thing you want, backhand index pointing right, is unpredictability. You need confidence. You need control. And that's exactly what this engine delivers. Because every part of it was designed to work under pressure. Not occasionally. Backhand index pointing right, constantly. And that's why, even after hours of heavy towing, extreme heat, and brutal conditions, the engine doesn't give up. It doesn't weaken. Backhand index pointing right, it keeps pulling. Like it was built for this exact moment. Because it was. And that's the difference between a normal engine and a heavy-duty diesel like the Duramax. One is built to perform. Backhand index pointing right, the other is built to endure. And when you put that into a truck like the Sierra 3500 HD, you don't just get power. Backhand index pointing right, you get confidence. The kind that lets you take on any load, any road, any challenge, without hesitation. Because now, you're not just driving a truck. Backhand index pointing right, you're commanding a machine built to handle anything.